As the U.S. celebrates the 4th of July weekend, President Biden's message about COVID-19 is one of cautious optimism. Yesterday, the president hosted a fireworks celebration for first responders and service members. Addressing the nation, Mr. Biden said the U.S. is, quote, closer than ever to beating the virus. But he stopped short of declaring full independence from COVID-19. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes has more about the president's speech.
America is coming back together.
At his largest gathering since taking office, President Biden argued the country is closer than ever to declaring independence from COVID-19.
And think about how far we've come.
But with the celebration, a note of caution.
That's not to say the battle against COVID-19 is over.
Happy 4th of July.
The White House hosted about 1,000 people last night on the South Lawn. All of them were tested for COVID beforehand. But the Delta variant is a growing problem.
We're certainly seeing the Delta variant rise in our state, which is concerning.
Even as the pace of vaccination slows.
Our goal by July 4th is to have 70% of adult Americans with at least one shot.
The president set that goal in May, but fell just short of it yesterday. As of this weekend, about 67% of American adults have had at least one shot. On Saturday, the president visited Traverse City, Michigan, and Vice President Harris stopped in Las Vegas, Nevada, to encourage more Americans to get vaccinated. The White House has launched surge teams to parts of the country with higher rates of vaccine hesitancy.
We have a lot more work to do.
The White House did face questions about the optics of holding such a large gathering for the 4th of July at a time when officials here acknowledge they're still on a wartime footing with the virus. It shows the tension that exists between the desire to celebrate the progress the country has made and being realistic about the challenges that lie ahead. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, the White House.
And for more, let's bring in Sean Sullivan. He's in Falls Church, Virginia. Sean is a CBS News political contributor and White House reporter for The Washington Post. Hi, Sean. Thanks so much for being with us on this holiday. We appreciate your time. So on one hand, you have the White House pushing people to get vaccinated, but also celebrating this kind of return to normal life. How is the president threading that needle?
Yeah, it's a really fine line, Caitlin, that the president has been trying to walk over this holiday weekend. On the one hand, he is out there sort of modeling the kind of behavior that he thinks other Americans and wants to promote other Americans to do, right? He was out at a cherry orchard sampling cherries. He went out for pie. He went out for ice cream. He played golf. He was out and about. And I think he's trying to send this message to the American people that, look, we are in a much different place than we were a year ago. Look at all the sort of leisure activities you're able to do, the sort of traditional 4th of July weekend activities, and I'm doing them too. And that's his message on the one hand. But on the other hand, we heard some caution from him last night saying that this virus has not been vanquished. And I would note he was very, very careful in the message that he sent about this idea of declaring independence from the virus, right? The White House had sort of built this moment as a moment where, you could sort of tap the symbolic significance of the holiday and have the president say, we're also declaring our independence from COVID. Didn't quite say that. He said, we're closer than ever. And so he's trying to strike this balance right now because the reality is with the Delta variant out there, with other challenges remaining, with vaccinations facing challenges, if the situation does worsen, he could open himself up to criticism from critics who might say, look, why are you holding this sort of celebration, this sort of celebratory type atmosphere over the holiday weekend? But on the other hand, he wants to take credit effectively for where we are at as a country. This was the issue that he campaigned on more than any other. It's been the issue when it comes to governing as president that he's focused on most heavily. And so, yeah, the White House wants to take credit for this, and they want to remind people, hey, when you're at your barbecue this weekend, when you're visiting grandparents, when you're out on the golf course, you're able to do this stuff because of some of the policies that this president has put in place. So it is a really, really tough balancing act, and we'll see whether the president's able to pull it off in a way that is convincing to Americans.
And another thing he has to navigate is this partisan divide over vaccines, of course. On Face the Nation over the weekend, Republican Governor Spencer Cox was asked about fellow Republicans and the vaccine. Let's take a listen.
politics is becoming religion in our country, that politics is becoming sport and entertainment in our country, that everything is political. It's a huge mistake, and it's caused us to make bad decisions during this pandemic and in other phases of our life as well. So it's deeply troubling.
So, Sean, in such a partisan time, what are the odds that a Democratic president has to actually encourage Republicans to vaccinate, even when it's a matter of life and death?
Pretty low at this point, frankly, Caitlin. I mean, we are, as you point out, in a really, really polarized country, a really, really divided country, one that's really divided along partisan lines. And when you look at some of the polling that is out there right now when it comes to vaccinations, it is clear right now from this polling that there is more hesitancy, there is more skepticism among Republicans. And that is a central challenge for this White House, is as a Democrat, as a figure that a lot of Republicans don't support, don't trust. Some Republicans don't even, officially acknowledge as the rightful president. They subscribe to some of the false narratives that have been pushed by former President Trump and other Republicans. That the election was tainted by fraud. Those allegations are false. And so all of this doubt and this division makes it very, very hard if you are the Biden administration to get sort of across that next threshold, right? They've set this 70% figure for July 4th. They came up just short. Vaccinations now, have slowed after really picking up the pace for a while there. And so the question is, how do you reach that last group of Americans who has not gotten vaccinated? Another thing we see in polling is that Americans who have not gotten vaccinated already don't seem likely to get vaccinated in the future. So how do you push people to do that? The partisanship makes it very, very hard. And when it comes to Republicans, it looks like it's going to take fellow Republicans to help make that sell. And so we see now a lot of these Republican governors, some of these Republican governors, trying to send this message to their constituents that they should go get vaccinated. But yeah, President Biden, not the ideal messenger, the Biden administration, not the ideal messenger, politically speaking, to break through with a lot of these Republicans who are skeptical about vaccinations and skeptical about President Biden himself.
Yeah, so we'll see if we see more Republican officials on TV trying to spread that same message that Governor Cox was. The president did declare that America is coming back together over the weekend, but polling tells us a little bit of a different story. The latest Washington Post poll shows the president's approval rating is at 50%, and 62% are satisfied with his handling of the pandemic. But he's struggling on issues related to immigration and crime. So, Sean, as you mentioned, this is something, the president campaigned on the pandemic. But as this kind of fades from the forefront, how is the White House pivoting its message as it's faced with all of these other issues and low polling on them?
Yeah, this is one of the most interesting political moments right now for the president, and it'll be telling how this White House navigates this in the months ahead. When I talk to strategists, both Republicans and Democrats, what they say is when they look at private polling, when they look at public polling, they are starting to see the pandemic recede as the most dominant political issue. This was something, of course, for many, many months was the top issue, the issue that was on the minds of voters all across the country. It dominated the discussion in the 2020 presidential campaign. It dominated the early part of President Biden's agenda. But now, as we see the country start to open up, as we see hospitalizations go down, as we see the situation improve, we're starting to see the issue sort of recede a little bit. And so where does that leave President Biden? Well, leaves him potentially in a really, really difficult spot because of those poll numbers that you just referenced. When it comes to crime, violent crime, immigration, border security, these are not issues that have played in President Biden's favor. We are seeing Republicans out there eager to run a midterm campaign that is a debate about border security, that is a debate about the rise in homicides and violent crime. There's a lot of skepticism among the public about the way President Biden has handled those issues. So the question for this White House is, if the focus from voters turns from the pandemic to violent crime, to border security, to immigration, how do they deal with that? I think we're starting to see a little bit more of a recognition on their part that they're going to have to find ways to address that head on. President Biden did a recent event. He devoted an entire afternoon to talking about violent crime, policing, what the administration was doing. we hadn't really seen that from this administration before. And a lot of Republicans are pointing to this and they're saying, hey, what took you so long? We've been talking about this for months. So, as the pandemic, if it does indeed continue to recede as a political issue, this is a challenge, no doubt, for Biden and the Democrats. How do they deal with the issues that could take its place? Because those issues, not really favorable issues for this administration right now.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, those issues are facing this administration, but also some big ticket agenda items like infrastructure, still an uphill climb at this point. So Sean Sullivan, I know you're going to be tracking that all for us in the coming days and weeks. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Caitlin.